We had a late breaking story. We are recording this on Wednesday, just last night. A news story broke that Chief Data Officer of the Social Security Administration, Charles Borges, filed, I hope that is pronounced somewhat like Ernst Borgnine. Charles Borges filed a protected whistleblower disclosure alleging the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, created a live copy of the U.S. Social Security database into a unapproved cloud environment, circumventing security oversight and potentially exposing over 300 million Americans' personal information to identity theft and other harms. Borges disclosed that specifically a live copy of the NumIdent, Numerical Identification System database, not following the typical security monitoring, oversight, or record-keeping mechanisms into a cloud environment. That copy will contain all data submitted for Social Security card applications. So that's your usual PII, names, addresses, date of birth, obviously Social Security numbers. Will also include parents' names and citizenship status, and some other potentially identifiable information. This, according to DOGE, was self-authorized to copy after a Supreme Court ruling in June lifted a temporary restraining order. The CIO for a Social Security Administration, Aram Magadasi, a DOGE-affiliated official, approved the transfer, stating the business need is higher than the security risk, and we accept all risks associated with implementation. This was assessed as very high risk by internal Social Security Administration resources, and noted it has the potential for a catastrophic impact. Borges was excluded from discussions about the project, and noted that a worst case scenario could require issuing new Social Security numbers to all Americans. That describes 3 escalating phases of wrongdoing. The whistleblower complaint, that is from March to July, including circumventing court orders and approving activities outside of normal review procedures. This is like a nightmare scenario of shadow IT processes, right? So, as individual citizens, this is kind of totally out of our control. But there are some important lessons here. Almost all businesses are going to have data that they share with third parties. So knowing what parties are doing with this data, I think that it is worth mentioning that this story came out the same week as the national data operation that was breached a while back and exposed some 300 million Social Security numbers from a data broker database that got breached, is now resuming operations. So this is not the first time that there has been a potential exposure of a huge amount of supposedly, kind of secure PII. So having a plan for if that third-party data does get breached is important. I will give I see we've got it in the notes. Yeah, anytime there's a mention of like data exposure, including Social Security numbers, just going to say it again, put a free freeze on your credit. There's a great Krebs article that I use when I send this advice to family members that explains like why it's important and links directly to the freeze page for each bureau. I can pop that into the resources for this week too. Jens, what do you want to add there?
I want to mention on the credit freeze thing, like you said, we'll put some resources out there. You don't need to pay for credit freezes. It does not cost money. Don't go through third party. There's various things out there like a LifeLock or whatever, right, that do this. Go right to the source, in my opinion, unless you've got some sort of really good reason to go somewhere else for it.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely worth it. The other thing I'll say is I've locked all my kids' Social Security numbers just because you're not 18 doesn't mean that your data can't get stolen. So also a good pro tip.
Same. It's not as easy. You have to get a bunch of copies of birth certificates and whatnot. So get that homework done, and then you have to mail it in usually or scan stuff in. It's not as easy.
Yeah, but I would say, in my opinion, it's worth it for where we are in the amount of data breaches that are happening constantly, and like the amount of PII that's just like loose on the internet. It's a very normal thing now for like your data to just be out there. It may not be used, but it may at some point. So
I think the kind of unique thing here is that, Social Security numbers have been in the wind for years. Like everybody's got, or you can get Social Security numbers anywhere. I don't know if there's ever been a leak that has parent and child Social Security numbers linked together here.
Yeah.
Good point.
Unique data set that they
had. The tough part too with this is like the amount of metadata that comes with a Social Security number and is linked to the Social Security number is that's the important thing here. Most people don't know this. Like Social Security numbers are actually like you can generate them. You can usually generate, like if you know a few things, like you can actually guess the number. It's not that complicated. It's not easy, but it's like definitely not impossible. And like people do this, right? But you definitely need the metadata that goes along with it, which is probably in this database. And my big thing here is just like, every time you have data in two places, have to protect two different things. It's hard enough to protect this data like in one place, and we have like data governance for a reason, right? Like data governance is literally the practice of like securing and governing data. And now you're doing it in two places, they're probably not the same for reasons, right? Like, so it's just like, why would like try to make your life not complicated, keep data in one place. Like we've done this for years. It's how most people do things.
Yep. I know that one of the first social media rules that I internalized is regardless of what the permission on a post is, just assume it's going to be public at some point. And time has shown that is true more often than we would like. So I think taking a similar approach of assume that someone has your social security number. What does your defense look like with that being true? Things like putting a credit freeze on is a great example. Things like looking at the critical services that you use, like your bank accounts, your cell phone provider. Oftentimes, these will default to last four of social as one of the verification methods. I often try, doesn't always work, but I do try to add a note to my account to not allow authorization using last four. Ideally, they're going to have a notification system like a token generator or ability to push through their app. Failing that, I would prefer a passcode that is unique to that account that I create as an authorization method versus defaulting to the last four of my social. So that's another kind of aspect to consider here, is that socials are treated as a private identifier when in reality, we can't think of them as such anymore.